Yeah, and there's risks with that as well, which I think is the line that Amazon's walking. I think you run into this risk of authenticity. If you're constantly trying to predict what a customer wants, is it authentic? And the second half of that, I think where there's a little bit of concerns as well, is you're then also ruining discovery.
Welcome to Retail Playbook, provided by РetailPlaybook, hosted by top retail agent researcher Andrew Bell. Retail Playbook is your go-to resource for cutting-edge research, original content, and future-proof strategies to make sure your business is staying ahead of the competition.
Hello, and welcome to Retail Playbook, where we look at discovering how agents influence the digital shelf in particular, and looking at how to optimize for Alexa for shopping, seeing all the data, the trends, things like that. Very excited to have one of the mega minds of the industry in here. It's great to have you, Destaney. Tell us a little bit about you. Love to know like your background, what you're doing now. And then we can get right in.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. My name is Destaney Wishon. I am the CEO of Better Media. I have been in the retail media space for going on 9 years now. I got started running a lot of HOK ads for mid-sized CPG brands. I was based out of Bentonville, Arkansas, so I got thrown into a lot of large accounts at a really young age and was having to optimize bids without software.
Oh my.
Fast forward 9 years from now, CEO of Better Media. We manage everything from Amazon, Walmart, Target, Instacart, Search, and DSP. And our goal is really to be the Ritz-Carlton of agencies. That's a bit of our tagline. We don't care to be the biggest, but we want to be the best. And we have really deep relationships with a lot of our brands. As you can see, I'm still incredibly passionate about the industry. That's why I'm on talking about this thrilling topic we have today. It's because I love what I do, and I think my team would say the same.
Oh, we love that. Thank you. Glad to have you. You're definitely one of the mega minds in the industry. We were just talking earlier. We don't really like the words guru or influencer because we're like, no, we're experts, in what we do. We're practitioners in the field. So what we're going to talk about today is a lot to do with customized SERPs, right? So if people who don't know what SERPs is search engine result pages. Maybe you just say search results pages. Maybe you just say organic results. But either way, we know that in Amazon today, things are drastically evolving. I don't want to say necessarily changing because there's still facets of SEO that matter. But now you have AI visibility in the mix. But I think it's also worth mentioning that level of personalization that's taking place on the SERP. We're going to go through and talk a little bit about this paper that I had discovered, the science paper. And if you remember, there was a paper called 𝗵cie𝘂𝗿𝗀 that came back a while, but really 𝗵cie𝘂𝗿𝗀 was just a confirmation of what everybody was kind of already seeing in the search results, as well as like the navigation. And we knew something was being shaken up. And from all the content I've seen, you've talked a lot about this. In fact, I remember you having something up where it was like 2 iPhones at once, right? And you were scrolling through side by side. It was very clearly different, right, as far as the result that came up. And what this academic paper showed us from Amazon, which was deployed in real e-commerce environment, it showed us that whole page optimization is very important, that you need to have visually rich formats for individual customers, personalized to them. And in particular, they focused on brands. So if you have XYZ bottle, water bottle, and then XYZ water bottle, whatever brand that might be, they would have two completely or two distinctly different SERPs, right? They would have different widgets is what it's showing. So one might have the first 19 results, and then after that have 2 widgets. And the examples it gave was trending now, and like frequently viewed, right? And then, or you might have the first 8, and then you have a widget, and then you have more organic results, and then another widget. So very clearly, Amazon's showing there's improvements there. In fact, in brand relevance, it was 1.87%, which in Amazon terms is huge. And then revenue uplift right away was 0.05%. And that's not even just full personalization. That's actually very little if you think about it, right? But it's definitely distinct. Imagine when they continue to do it more, we see uplift in revenue. So where do you see where the industry is right now?
One, I think it's exceptionally important. If you consider how Amazon gained a competitive advantage over their retailers, originally it was by being the everything store. Things that you could not get from Walmart or Target, you were able to get from Amazon. It had everything. That was the golden days, some would say, of being a seller. Well, Amazon scaled, became more mature. You see all of these legacy brands really starting to position Amazon as a key focus. And Amazon starts realizing, we really don't need 300 different pencils on the platform. We need to prioritize the best. So then we kind of saw this shift to more mature brands, I would say, were being prioritized on the platform. Advertising got a little bit more expensive. We saw a little bit maturity and stabilization in terms of review counts and things like that on the page. Well, now we're sitting here of what's the next competitive advantage over the key retailers? Well, personalization and customization is something that just isn't possible at scale in a physical store. When you walk into a Target or a Whole Foods, you get what you get, and the physical shelf stays relatively stable, right? You'll get new products, and all of them are focusing on innovation. It's a very key focus. If anyone reads any of the Target announcements, it's their focus on innovation and new products. Well, Amazon's taking that approach, and they can do it in a way that is much more personalized because of all of the inputs they have from users. A good example of this is, let's take the protein category. Seems relatively cut and dry. But if I am a bodybuilder, I'm going to be looking for a different type of protein than an 80-year-old who needs nutrients, or a mom who's on the go with kids. One product can be shown to very different users. So what Amazon's showing in this white paper is really, in my opinion, the success of this little test that they ran. In that when you show customers products that are personalized to them and the inputs that Amazon has, which is a lot, you're going to see an increase in conversion rate. And the second part that we talked about is the long-term sales value. I'll pass it off to you in a second, because that's one of the key highlights in this paper. But Amazon's biggest focus right now is customization. We see it with AMC audiences. We see it with Alexa shopping, and also proving long-term sales. Just this week, Amazon announced their new omnichannel report, which showcases you off-platform in-store sales that were driven from DSP. And they've also announced this long-term sales metric, where now you're looking at, hey, when I ran an ad on Amazon advertising, what can I actually expect to get out of that? What is the repeat purchases? What is the long-term value of that ad? Which I think ties back perfectly to everything we're talking about today.
Every company wants ROAS, right? They want to know right away
ROAS.
what's the immediate return on investment, right? But they're really missing out on return on advertising, return on advertising spend, because there's so much more long-term impact to talk about it, right? Because in this paper, it talks about and evaluates that after search, including short-term engagement, short-term revenue, and then the 12-week downstream spending. Which, if you think about it, this is really a precursor to them testing with Alexa for shopping, right? Because they're looking at the total downstream impact of what AI is helping with, even if we don't see the tangible sales. And we're seeing that pretty much in every industry, in particular. I like what you said here, in particular about the digital shelf custom to the shopper and content. So one thing the paper in particular talks about is their page's ranker uses what's called the 3 C's. And I feel like these are the 3 things you literally talk about all the time. They might have just took from your content and applied it. I don't know. But it's context. So it'd be, the marketplace, the device, the query, specificity that you're in, right? So for example, if it's my mom's going to get me, Legos, to be more specific, she'll say, okay, Marvel Legos. Oh, wait, he likes the big sets. He doesn't like the small ones. Okay, Marvel Legos, but he likes spaceships too. Okay, Marvel Legos, large, whatever it might be, right? But oftentimes search can't handle stuff like that. But if you're able to include context per person, it can help. And although that they can't do it yet at the individual query level, I do foresee that happening. But you have context, customer, and content. Customer includes the status related signals, such as, the membership, the customer. And then content, they describe it as includes relevance, brand alignment, product type alignment, and value related signals. So it could be a lot of what content is actually on your listing in particular. And does it align too with your stuff related to AMC? So my question here is like for AMC audience membership, think about that with context or with the customer here that it says within the 3 C's, it talks about membership. Clearly it's talking about your AMC audience membership to a certain extent, right?
In my opinion, again, the future is context based as a whole. That's what 𝗵𝘁𝗄𝗿 was pointing to. I think that is what we're seeing personally on the AI side. How do you make AI successful? You give it as much context as possible. We're seeing Amazon integrate this directly on the advertising front in a similar fashion. So you mentioned AMC. AMC audiences allow us to pull, I think, the first C, context, of how does someone typically shop within a category? Are there tendencies that they have? Is there a certain brand that they typically purchase from? Do they usually buy Orgain or Vital Proteins? And can I now integrate an AMC audience to account for that? Yes. The second one is customer. Amazon has a lot of customer insights. They know if you have a high propensity for buying premium products. They know if you typically choose lower price products or discounted products. That is an AMC audience we can apply. We can specifically segment our customers by their buyer likelihood. And then the last one is content. I think content really comes into play with the changes we're seeing, even from a character account perspective. Amazon has realized that, hey, maybe it's not in the customer's best interest to allow brands to stuff whatever they want into keywords. So Amazon's analyzing, what do customers interact with the most? Is it your video? Is it your custom image? Do they scroll down throughout your product detail page? Do they look at your reviews? I would assume that comes into play a little bit, as well as, the click-through rate aspect of your main image optimization. So when Amazon can start seeing some of these signals, they're going to start showcasing products that align. Now, this makes it really hard for brands in the traditional sense to blanket rank off of something as simple as the keyword that converts best. But at the end of the day, Amazon's always been about optimizing for their end customer, and this does that. If I go to Amazon and I can immediately find what I want because I have a customized SERP, I'm going to go to Amazon more frequently.
No, I think it's so true. And just as humans in general, think of like how many different, types of, everyone has a different personality of how they view content, right? Some need more text heavy. Me, I probably like text heavy, but that doesn't mean the other person, obviously they want something much more visual, right? Which is good too. Or maybe one person wants all videos on there. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but even in the SERP, you've probably seen this too, or even on the homepage, I see, little carousels of like influencer videos going across, all various kinds of things. So obviously, we've known for a long time the homepage, for example, has been personalized, at the exploratory stage there. But one thing we haven't been willing to admit recently is how the search results page themselves are beginning to appear personalized. In fact, there's an Amazon Science, it's kind of dirty, but an Amazon Science example that's always given. They call it the bumblebee problem. There's, you put, like for me, I'm a dad, right? I go in and I search bumblebee dress, right? Or bumblebee costume, just for Halloween. And what would show up is not the transformer bumblebee, right? As opposed to an actual bumblebee costume, which I would find much more value for my 2-year-old girl, right? A bumblebee costume as opposed to a bumblebee transformer. We wouldn't want that to happen. But I think in that sense, Amazon's trying to solve that. And we know with Alexa for shopping, it's able to because it can factor in that context right away. But the question is, how do you factor in that context, that customer, right? The content at scale. I think that's the hardest thing without sacrificing, latency, right? The time in which it takes for all the search results pages to show up.
Yeah. And there's risks with that as well, which I think is the line that Amazon's walking. I think you run into this risk of authenticity. If you're constantly trying to predict what a customer wants, is it authentic? And the second half of that, I think where there's a little bit of concerns as well, is you're then also ruining discovery. If I always say this, Amazon's my preferred shopping, but then I walk into a Walmart or a Target and I get to walk down multiple rows and I'm like, holy crap, there's so many products I didn't know existed. Right. So
Yeah.
You have to also continuously focus on this discovery element of there's something to be said about innovation and new products that are bringing new customers to the platform. That's where the retailers are doing exceptionally well right now. They're all focusing on, really big influencer brands that are going viral on TikTok and saying, how can this brand bring net new customers onto my platform? So I think that's kind of this balance. You want to customize SERP because you're going to increase conversion rates, but you also want to drive discovery because you do want to bring new users to the platform that are looking for products that maybe they didn't think that they wanted.
No, they otherwise wouldn't found, right? I think that's a fantastic point there. The amount of times I've been disappointed though when I shop on Walmart and I think it's going to be in stores, I can't wait to see it, and I'm like, oh crap! It said, don't worry, I figured that out by now. I'm more modern now, but apparently wasn't able to figure that out then.
I still don't understand when I'm shopping on the app. I'll buy something and then only 30% of my groceries will be delivered, and it'll be like, oh, the other 70% are, going to be delivered over 48 hours. I'm like, how do you know what's in store versus not?
Which people, by the way, this does not mean we don't know Amazon. We do know Amazon, so you can still come to us. Just on that.
This is a user experience issue for me.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think it's so interesting as marketers when we recognize those things and it's easy to say when we have one problem to holistically apply it to everybody as if everybody's the same persona. But I think what AMC has shown us is that's not true, that there's distinct personas, customer journeys across so many different people. So are you saying with AMC, you can basically set up as many personas as you want, right? Customer profiles to target?
Yeah, to an extent. And this is where I think the logic gets really fun on how you set up your campaigns, because at the end of the day, the audiences are applied as a bid modifier. And at the end of the day, you still need a certain size of audience. I believe it's 2,000 users right now that you need to have within your audience in order to be able to run it. And it's still overlapped, at least on the search side, with a keyword. And that's where it gets fun is, for any one keyword, I can slice and dice into multiple different audiences. So something that we do is we apply different bidding logic based on the likelihood of conversion. So for one example, we had a very disruptive product, but it was a $200 birdhouse. Is AI enabled, so it's disruptive and incredible. But if I'm bidding on birdhouse, my conversion rate is going to be inherently lower than the category because it's expensive. But when we were able to apply some of these audience overlaps for premium products or users that were exposed to a streaming TV ad, we could make assumptions on the conversion rate increase and what we were then willing to bid based on that higher conversion rate. So it gets to be really fun. And then you start thinking about the fact that you can apply these audiences to your creative as well. I can apply it to my sponsor brands video, sponsor product video, streaming TV.
You talk about that a lot. I love it. The idea that creative and placement are becoming inseparable, right, to each other. It's and that's interesting because the paper actually weights products by the pixel coverage itself and page region. Its brand alignment metric gives the top, middle, and bottom a different, aspect of importance. And so the creative and placement here, like you just said, again, sometimes I think, are they just taking from our content and set up the experience based on your content? That's what I was often wondering when I was reading this paper. I was like, I've read all this stuff before. I wonder from who.
Well, thank you. It's funny when you were talking about your Codex experiment that you ran, and you can give more details. I'm over here I just logged into 2 iPhones and scrolled and wrote down by hand every single instant to figure out the discrepancies. And you're over here Destaney, in theory, it's great for vibes, but that is not logically applied at scale. So it's a good balance. We need the Andrews that are going to dive into the papers, and you need the Destinies to vibe check.
Yeah, well, that doesn't take away from the fact that you're a mega mind in the industry. And I often say this. I don't know if I can say this on a podcast, but I often say women are smarter than men. I grew up in a household of 3 sisters. So I know what it's, I know the power of women and also the thinking of women and the intelligence of women. And so, yeah, if it's taught me anything, it's taught me women are smarter than men. And it served me very well up until this point. So
I love that. I always like to call it the Malcolm Gladwell point of if you do anything for 10,000 hours, you're going to get really good at it. And this is one of those scenarios where, there's an advantage to being agency side. I get to look at a lot of different categories because every category is different. Amazon always rolls out like crazy tests to either fashion or like furniture. You go into either of those categories, you're going to see crazy stuff.
I was in furniture, home decor, had 4,000 ASINs in that space for a luxury home decor brand. And I totally see that. Like it's like a huge difference. You ever see the SERPs too, when it's just like it is on desktop where it's not even multiple products going across. It's just one product per.
Yes, it's like the OG one line item.
Yeah, sometimes I see that. I see it with when I type in long mirrors, for example, it'll show that, which makes sense because the images, if you want long mirrors to fit, or if you type in like furniture, I notice the furniture ones are much bigger too.
I think that like brings us back to home of the customization that we're seeing in like the future. And I think, broader picture, Amazon's got to find a balance. Too much customization could be a bad thing. You're then over optimizing the bottom of the funnel conversion, but you're no longer driving discovery and net new customers, which is risky. So you have to figure that out. But I mean, the future is exciting in my opinion. Like as a customer, I love the idea of Amazon knowing what breed of dog I have and making sure to only show me dog food that fits within the line of that breed. Like it's really efficient for me as a customer. And I think brands for too long, at least in the era where you and I were really growing, brands tried to take like this everything approach and cast too wide of a net. And they tried to capture every single customer and have the most generalized listings. At the end of the day, the brands that are solving the problem and they can connect with that audience are going to win.
There's one thing I want to switch because this is something I've heard you say, which, when people hear this, they balk, but with ROAS as not a sufficient optimization objective, which I do agree with you on this in specific. But I've heard you talk about it. I love your views on it. But you talk about how your budget allocation content, it divides advertising into different jobs, including brand targeting, ranking, market share. Each has different levels of conversion, ROAS, incrementality, right? Those things. And I've noticed in one of your posts, you said you argued that a balanced portfolio should produce both immediate sales and sustainable growth. So kind of explain that a little bit. And I'll be honest, like with your DSP, I always had the assumption when I was, with the brand is like, oh, DSP is only for big sellers. It's not for smaller brands too. But yeah, let's focus here on like, okay, why is ROAS just not enough?
Great question. I think the simplest way to answer that is Amazon advertising has a direct correlation on your BSR, your organic rate. At the end of the day, anyone who's been in the space, anyone who's tested this knows this. If you strategically spend more money, you drive more sales, which gets you more reviews, which sends a signal to Amazon that you should be positioned better on the digital shelf, right?
Yeah.
That's why ACOS and ROAS cannot be viewed as a normal advertising expense. It's not a billboard. It's not driving, direct sales in any way. It's much bigger than that because it influences your positioning on the page. And if your product moves from the bottom of page 1 to the top of page 1, your total revenue is going to increase a ton. That's the most simple fashion. So I'll pause there. Any comments on that?
I really like that because, in a traditional mindset, and I'm used to convincing, older generations of this in business of like going beyond, ROAS and ACOS and talking about other metrics that really do matter, that show, okay, here, yes, the immediate sales, the short-term engagement, but then also the longer-term outcomes too. But I think we probably have an addiction to immediacy that we don't take into factor the, long horizon type customer journeys, because the customer journey is far from simple and it's very different and distinct per brand.
I actually have a good data for that. I've pulled up one account.
Oh, yeah.
Just one. Average price point, I think, is around $30 for this account. If we're looking at first touch attribution, over 30% of sales happen after 24 hours after the click's made. 30% of sales, which is a decent amount. And you think about how many times we've been on webinars or Q&As where we get asked about day parting. Should I turn my ads off at night? And I push back and say that it's a very likely customers are adding your product to cart at midnight and not checking out until the next day. Like, this is one account, and I can scroll through many. If I looked at overall agency data, I think it maybe even skewed a little bit heavier of the amount of purchases that happen after 24 hours. And I think this is what Amazon is trying to say as well. That's why they're giving us access to things like long-term sales and first click versus last click. But it's we're so addicted to immediacy, but just because we have access to the data doesn't mean we shouldn't stop being marketers and thinking about how consumers are actually engaging with our brand.
So this kind of leads me to another question, because I really want to know your perspective on this, because it's probably inevitably comes up to you all the time. Because we know now that we can track sales of prompts right now. Like it can actually provide you sales now and tell you how much it costs. And we've noticed it is significantly less in terms of clicks for right now. But from the brands I've seen and worked with, I'm only seeing like 1 or 2 sales per campaign on these prompts. They're
not even live in like half of my accounts.
Yeah. See, see, that's and I feel like there's an attribution problem when it comes to that. Do you think sponsored prompts are working as good as it's people are claiming? Do you think there is a lot of potential there?
I will say a lot of potential. And the reason being, users, customers, humans outside of Amazon are being trained on a very different way of searching. It's no longer the days of Google where I would go in and say, how do you do this? I open up my ChatGPT and I'm like, what plant is best? And it's like, well, I know you live in Florida and I know your average temperature and I know this is where you have space, right? It's built. I'm being trained inherently to get used to that model. Reverting back to Google is really painful for me. I hate searching through blogs. Amazon's going to be the same. If users are inherently being trained on this contextual model and how to engage with it, they're also going to start doing the same on Amazon. That's where I think even, I can't say the name because she's going to go off, but like the voice shopping as well, as that starts to improve, customers aren't going to use keywords anymore. They're going to use prompts, which I think is very interesting for brands. Logically, I don't think it's that difficult. Amazon's doing a decent job of recommending prompts. I just don't think that they're scaling it out a ton right now. But I think that really begs a question for brands on how you're deploying money. And I think that brands need to move more money into upper funnel so that they're not relying on the prompt to give the direction. I think that they need to focus more on driving branded search.
That's interesting you say that, because we are conditioning people outside of Amazon to get used to contextual search and everything else, which is only going to benefit Amazon, right? But then Amazon at the same time has to, it's not just a place where you have transactional queries. A lot of people think if you're on Amazon, then you're meant to just be transactional. You're going to buy something on there. That's that's true in a sense, but it's also very navigational, informational, like it is on Google, where you are researching. And with Alexa for Shopping, it's providing the opportunity for that. And so what we're seeing on Alexa for Shopping, where there's about 5 or 6 product cards that show up when they do, and then there's usually 2 or 3 headings that show up with a couple products underneath it. But even in the digital shelf too, I love your thoughts too. It's kind of rolling out a little bit, but when you type in for example, if you type in a question on the search bar, it'll automatically invoke the search results page with just Alexa for Shopping stuff. Not necessarily the Alexa for Shopping UI, but a totally different UI that encompasses a lot more products than the typical 5 to 6 products that show up for Alexa for Shopping now. So I envision though, that personalization, like if someone does like using Alexa for Shopping, there's going to be more prompts in their search results pages, right? That show up across the place. More, widgets that might describe, hey, recommended by Alexa. It's like a generative carousel, if you will, that shows up like a frequently viewed or a trending now. It would be recommended for you from Alexa, right? Something like that, or researched by Alexa. Do you foresee that happening where there will no longer be a distinction between Alexa for Shopping bar and Amazon search bar, but both work in harmony together?
I would say so, because Amazon has to drive adoption in Amazon shopping, or else I could see them losing discovery depending on the debate of agentic shopping. I mean, again, the debate of agentic shopping falls on checkout and supply chain. So you take that out of the equation. Amazon does not want customers going to ChatGPT and saying what protein's best, finding a brand name, and then going to Amazon. Because what happens is then their retail media network falters because they're no longer able to catch all that sponsored ad revenue, because now it's just branded search. So I think Amazon has to figure out a way to drive adoption, force the adoption, whether or not the customer necessarily likes it, because it's going to happen regardless. And you would much rather it happen with Amazon shopping or Alexa shopping than ChatGPT or Claude.
You know what kind of reminds me of my wife? This is kind of a different example. They refused to get the new iPhone update. I forgot when this was, maybe a year ago, because they kept hearing about the new photos, like the way photos showed up. Like they hated it. And apparently it was a big thing going around on social media. So they refused to update them. Like, babe, you know that we could get hacked if you don't update your iPhone. She's like, I don't care. I don't want to do the new photos everyone's talking about. Never heard anything about it after that. Like maybe 5 to 6 months, there was, it's like, okay, yeah, this sucks. But then after that, for what would be like the last year, maybe even year and a half, it's like, no, it's just part of their daily life. So like in the same way, like if you are pushing it on people, like you have to push it on people in order for them to get a taste of it.
Yeah, because if you don't, someone else will.
Exactly. It's the same of like telling someone you need to go online. I'm not going online. Eventually everyone ends up online, because there was a lot of revolt against that of like, I don't even want to go online.
And now I get 50 Facebook messages of random reels from my family.
And this before, they used to hate Facebook. At least my parents. It's funny, and now all of a sudden they're the ones on Facebook. And by the way, I see them more on their phones than us. So
that we can, I will be careful what I say in case any of my family decides to listen to this podcast. But I have the same issue.
So Destaney, we want to know, what is the future of Amazon then? Where do you see things going? And how does advertising have a play in it too?
Great question. I would segment the future into 2 buckets. One is just seamless checkout and that customer experience of the personalized SERP. Like we know that's a direction they're going towards. We've already seen it. This is the whole podcast episode is around personalization. That's something I think we can guarantee, and that brands really need to lean into. The brands that are utilizing AMC audiences that are truly curating the customer experience through their journey, I think are going to be successful. The second thing, though, I would say is in order to continue to drive growth in other areas of the business, Amazon's going to have to drive discovery. So I think there's going to be a lot of really unique opportunities that we see with new modules or, the homepage takeovers and things like that are driving a lot of innovation, which can be a really big opportunity for disruptor brands and, people that are launching cool innovations. So I think it's this balance of like, where do you invest in upper funnel so that people know your brand and go to Amazon for that seamless checkout experience? But also on the flip side, how do you lean into the AMC audiences and that curated experience to make sure you're maximizing the conversion opportunity?
No, that's really good. That's exciting. Obviously, it's really big. How advertising has a play there in personalization, and thank you again for being on here. We loved having you. Thank you for your unique, original insights. I'm glad we didn't just bring a guru on here. We brought, that's what we do at RetailPlaybook. We bring on experts in their field. We bring on mega minds in their field. So really glad to have you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Andrew.